What's going on, everybody? Justin here with Everything Aquarium, back with another awesome aquarium video, of course. Today's video, I'm going to show you how I do a water change on my 75-gallon tank using a utility pump and a Aquarium water change system. You can use a Python water change system, a Magitarium, whatever Amazon brand you'd like. But I use the Aquarium one. It was the one I had available. It's a 25-foot. You hook it up to your sink. I'm going to show you how I drain it with using an Aquarium AQ3000 utility pump that I just picked up. It's right here in this bucket. I'll show you a quick up-close view of it. Looks just like that. It's giant. I'm going to actually be doing a review on that here pretty soon, so stay tuned for that video. But that's for a different day. Let's start on the water change. So the very first thing I do when I'm doing a water change on a tank like this is I'll take my temperature probe, a reliable one that I know works good. I'll take that. I'll check the temperature of the water, which just could take a couple minutes, and I always kind of compare this to my Inkbird temperature controller, and I kind of compare the two together. I know this is a meat thermometer, so it's going to be a little bit more trustworthy than that Amazon one there. And we'll see what this gets up to. I dropped this in water earlier, so I don't even know if it's going to be that trustworthy now. But just as long as I can match two numbers together, that'll work out good for me. It's looking like this is right around 75.5 degrees, or excuse me, 75 degrees. Pretty much right on top. So that's what I know to get my water to before I start pumping it into the tank. So then what I do from that point, after I adjust those things and do those small minor things like checking that temperature and whatnot, is I'll connect a larger diameter hose coming off of my utility pump, which I'm going to put into the tank, to my smaller diameter hose, which is on the Aquarium water change system, which then goes to the sink. Which really you don't have to pay attention to this part much, because this is kind of just rigged because this is a newer pump and I haven't gotten the larger size diameter hose to go to the sink yet. So for now you can kind of not pay attention to this if you don't want to. This is just the way I'm doing it for now until I make it to Home Depot. So yeah, connect that to the larger one, run this to the sink, and I'm going to put the pump into the tank and start draining the water. So another thing that I do is I'll come back and I'll take my this is the guard that actually comes with the pump. I'll take that and I'll put that back under just to make sure it keeps the fish out. Then I'll drop this down into the tank. It can float. It doesn't have to be super submerged because, you know, I'm not going to be draining it down to the bottom. I'll take that, make sure everything's good, let that kind of get the air out for a minute. I'll take this pump, plug it in down here. Once that starts flowing and I know I don't have any leaks, that's good to go. We'll drain that down. I've got that just pumping into the utility sink here. As you can see, the flow is pretty weak just because it is going through this smaller diameter hose. So it's not, you know, it's pushing as much as it can. But it's a lot better than using the attachment to your sink, which is going to, of course, you know, use a crap ton of water. Typically I would gravel vac. But this tank just had a recent water change on it with a really good gravel vac, so I'm just going to be changing out the water to bring the nitrates down and any ammonia if there is any present, which I don't think there is. There's nothing really going into the tank that would cause an ammonia spike if I were to overfeed, I guess, of course, but I don't typically overfeed. So anyways, while that drains, I'm going to run a time lapse here, so check that out. Another important step when doing a water change is to pay attention to your heater. Pay attention to the level of how much is out of the water. You never want that heater or the element to really come out of the water, especially while it's on. Mine are in a safe range. The heater element doesn't really start until about 3/4 down on that little one and almost halfway down on that large, or on that smaller one there. Same thing with filters. You don't want to let them run dry too much. These ones are okay because they're not going to be on for long. That one's sucking up water just fine. That's got enough water coming through it to where it's not worrying. It's even turning up a little bit. So now what we're going to do is go over to the sink, adjust the water temperature, and start putting water back in here. But also, actually, before I do that, I'm going to want to take whatever type of dechlorinator of your choice. I use Fritz Complete. That's what I've been using for past couple months, and it's been working fine. And we're going to dose that accordingly. So with this Fritz Complete, it's usually 50 gallons as a cap full, or something like of that sort. I usually use a little bit more. because it's good to it's good to use a little extra, you know, not going overboard or anything, but it detoxifies ammonia and nitrates and stuff like that. So I'll take about usually about 1.5 capfuls if I don't overflow it everywhere like I just did. And I'll dump it kind of by where my wave maker is, or my circulation pump. That way I know it gets spread before I decide to put tap water back in here. So I did 2 capfuls, so now we got at least 100 gallons of treatable, you know, that's going to treat. We'll let that circulate for a second. I'm going to take our water change system, put the end of it in there, not all the way in the water, because I don't want it to start sucking up. I'm going to close the valve on it. That way I can go check my water temperature before we start. Now, if you remember earlier what we checked our temperature at, it was at about 76 degrees or 75 degrees if I recall correctly. One of those two. I'll take a few cupfuls of this and I'll adjust the hot and cold accordingly. I always turn the cold on full blast because you can never get it, you're going to worry about the hot more than anything. I'll take that, bring it over here actually so you can see it. I'll put the cup full of water there, check my temperature this way, and we'll see what that reads. So it'll take a couple seconds to go up. And it looks like I'm probably going to need to turn it up a little bit more. That's actually pretty close. Maybe just a tap. Let's see what it does. Now sometimes this will take a couple minutes, but you just got to be patient. Once you get that to about where you want it, 74.5 is good for me. I will go over here, flip my valve, and run over and flip the other one before it blows up. I know I shouldn't pressurize it like this, but I do. I'll come over here and I'll flip this valve and bleed out that air, and then we got our fresh water coming out. And now you can double check that temperature if you want, but I know it's usually pretty good, especially when I check it those few times at the tap. And I'll let that fill up. Here's a couple other quick tips while I let that fill up. I usually like to keep where the water is flowing from, as you can see the tube right here, I like to keep that above the water. That way it's creating that surface agitation and oxygenating the water as much as possible. Kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone on that. That never hurts, just so long as it's in the tank and not splashing everywhere. But if it's all the way under, submerged like this, yeah, you get some oxygenation because you got some air left in the tube, but as soon as that gets all diffused there, you're out of air. So if it's underwater, you're not getting that oxygenation. If it's out of the water like that, breaking the surface, then you are. Just as long as it's exposed to the atmosphere. The other tip is, I'll actually bring the camera up here to show you. I always like to keep a monitor on my, keep an eye on my Inkbird temperature controller. Excuse me, I'm forgetting all my words here. Just to make sure that water's not taking a spike for the hottest or for the coldest, that it's going to break my alarm and send the alarm off. So I always keep an eye on that just to make sure that's running good as well. Now let's talk about water level. So I usually like to run my tanks pretty high, but that again is because I have these glass canopies up here. So I like to get it pretty close to the top, obviously not where it's overflowing. That's a little ridiculous. But I like to bring it past the black trim to where you can't see it anymore, which, on this tank that's a good 2 inches or so. So, I'd say about maybe 1 inch from the top is where I like to go. So pretty close, and right about there is how I'll shut it off. Alright folks, so that's going to wrap up this video. That's how I do a water change. I got the level right where I want it. All my pumps and filters are running good. That one's a little bit below the water, which I'll adjust later. But my sponge filters, I just keep those cycling in here, and they agitate the surface just enough for where I need. This is by no means a display tank anymore. That's over the other way at the Geophagus tank. That is my display tank. But anyways guys, that's it for now. Pretty simple. The next video you'll see is probably going to be how to do a water change on like a nano tank or a planet tank, because it's a little bit more different. You can't use a giant pump like that. You can use a smaller one, but I have a different way of doing that, and I'll show you that in the next video. And after that will probably be a review on that Aquarium AQ3000 utility pump. That's a pretty cool pump there. I like that very much. So anyways guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you'll comment down below and let me know what I could do different, or what you guys do different, or just how you do a water change. I want to figure out a different way to get that water temperature right coming right out of the faucet there. So let me know if you have any input on that as well, guys. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.